galaxy bled, and humanity held the blade. An unseen hand thrust the old warrior toward his final fight. Captain Douglas Webb stood rigid on the bridge of the UESF Shadow, a sleek stealth ship slicing through forbidden space. The weight of his clandestine mission hung heavy, to pierce the shroud of secrecy around Nausicaan Empire fleet movements and rip truths from the void. A routine patrol, an easy cover story fed to subordinates and superiors alike. But routine died when the distress call keened across subspace. An alien ship, crippled and alone, coasting on fumes at the ragged edge of the nebula. Webb ordered the Shadow to its side. Magnetic boots clanged on rended deck plates slick with vital fluids of unknown hues. Lights flickered, consoles smoked, and the stench of burnt plastic and seared flesh swirled in equal measure. Only one Nausicaan drew breath, a breath rattling toward its final rasp, until human medics forced him back from the brink. He called himself Zephyr, claimed high rank and urgent news Earth must hear. Grizzled veterans blanched at the thought of a Nausicaan defector aboard, but Captain Webb saw an asset to be used. Damn his orders, Zephyr would have his audience. And that audience shivered as an empire's dirty secrets spilled forth. Centuries ago, at the dawn of mankind's stellar rise, human warships smashed Nausicaan lines and blockades. Fleets forged from grit, genius, and guts carved a path through the galactic battlefield, until suddenly they stopped. A new treaty chained humanity's champions to its home front, confining starfaring innovation to civilian designs and trade convoys. Unshackled from the human threat, Nausicaan tyrants cemented their stranglehold on 100 helpless worlds, and waited. Ancient prophecies haunted the Nausicaan leadership. Portents of human ships returned, unchained from treaty and unchecked by truce. Nightmares of humanity ascendant, seizing its destiny among the stars, and toppling the rotten structure on which Nausicaan dominance teetered. Zephyr gasped his last revelation through blood-stained teeth. The Nausicaans would soon embark on their final conquest, an extermination of humankind to thwart the prophesied fall of their imperium. Unless word reached Sol of the coming onslaught, Zephyr's final mission, now Webb's impossible choice, to violate every duty and directive in a desperate bid to save the future, to light the spark that would burn a galactic tyranny to ash. In that moment, Captain Douglas Webb decided to run headlong into the fire. Captain Webb's mind focused as the weight of Zephyr's revelations settled upon his shoulders. The fate of humanity itself hung in the balance, the specter of galactic domination looming on the horizon. With a heavy heart, he gave the order to divert course, setting the UESF Shadow on a path toward Earth, and the desperate hope of warning High Command before it was too late. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As the Shadow emerged from the nebula's embrace and into charted space, proximity alarms blared with sudden urgency. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the looming form of a Nausicaan warship, its hull filled with weaponry. The ominous insignia of General Korzak, notorious enforcer of the Nausicaan Imperium, emblazoned its flank. "Evasive maneuvers!" Webb barked, his crew leaping into action as the first salvo of enemy fire rocked the Shadow's shields. The stealth ship darted and weaved, its agility a meager defense against the raw firepower of its pursuer. Consoles sparked and smoke filled the bridge as the onslaught intensified, the Shadow's systems straining under the brutal assault. Gritting his teeth, Webb scanned the star charts, desperate for an escape. His eyes locked onto a dense asteroid field, a treacherous labyrinth of rock and ancient wreckage. With a wordless nod to his helmsman, he plotted their course, the Shadow plunging headlong into the perilous maze. Korzak's warship followed, undeterred by the hazards that lurked within the field. The two vessels danced a deadly ballet amidst the tumbling debris, the Shadow's smaller size and human-honed reflexes its only advantage against the relentless barrage. Asteroids shattered and derelict hulls crumbled as stray shots found their mark, the once silent graveyard now alive with the thunder of battle. Amidst the chaos, a plan took shape in Webb's mind, a gamble born of desperation and the indomitable human spirit. He turned to his crew, his voice steady despite the klaxons that wailed around them. "Abandon ship," he ordered, his words met with stunned silence. Take refuge in the derelicts. Scavenge what you can. Repair your escape pods. I'll draw Korzak away. Captain, you can't. His executive officer, Commander Talia Nova, began to protest, but Webb silenced her with a look. That's an order, Commander. The mission comes first. Earth must be warned. With grim nods, the crew obeyed, filing into escape pods and vanishing into the asteroid field's depths. Webb stood alone on the bridge, his hand steady on the helm as he guided the shadow deeper into the maze, Korzak's warship dogging his every turn. Time seemed to stretch as the two ships clashed. Webb's skills pushed to their limit as he wove through the perilous terrain. The shadow's stealth systems pushed to their breaking point. Sweat beaded his brow, his focus unwavering even as the enemy's fire grew ever closer. Just as all seemed lost, a flicker of hope emerged. The comm crackled to life, Nova's voice terse but triumphant. They had done it, salvaged parts from the derelicts, jury-rigged an EMP weapon from the ancient components. The stage was set for a final, desperate strike. Webb's lips curled into a grim smile as he laid his trap, the shadow dancing at the edge of destruction, luring Korzak into position. The Nausicaan warship loomed, its weapons primed for the killing blow. And the EMP burst forth, a silent scream of electromagnetic fury that engulfed the enemy vessel. Its systems flickered and died, leaving it drifting, helpless, amid the asteroid field's grasp. Seizing their chance, Nova and the boarding party struck, breaching the warship's hull and storming its corridors. The battle was fierce but swift, human tenacity pitted against Nausicaan brawn. In the end, it was Korzak himself who fell to his knees, a captive aboard his own broken ship. But as Webb stood before the vanquished general, the truth he sought to wrest from snarling lips chilled him to the bone. Zephyr's warning had been but the tip of a far more insidious iceberg. The rot ran deep. The tendrils of Nausicaan influence coiled around Earth's very heart. Infiltrators, saboteurs, operatives hidden in plain sight, poised to shatter humanity's defenses from within. With the shadow crippled and Earth unwittingly compromised, Webb faced an impossible choice: to risk all on a daring plan to expose the truth and purge the corruption, or to gamble on a chain of command that might already dance to alien strings. As he gazed out at the stars, a heavy weight settled in his chest, the weight of a decision that would shape the fate of worlds. Webb's eyes narrowed as he processed the enormity of Korzak's revelation. Earth's defenses, compromised from within, the very heart of human space, a ticking time bomb of Nausicaan treachery. He clenched his fists, mind racing through impossible scenarios. "Nova!" he barked, turning to his executive officer. "Prep the shadow for immediate departure. We're going off the grid." "Sir?" Nova's brow furrowed. "What about High Command?" "High Command may already be compromised. We can't risk it." Webb's voice was steel. "We find the truth ourselves." Hours later, the shadow slipped through the atmosphere of a colossal gas giant, its hull groaning under the immense pressure. Korzak's stolen clearance codes had led them here, to a hidden Nausicaan intelligence outpost buried deep within the planet's toxic storms. The station's docking bay shimmered into view, a fortress of alien alloys and pulsing energy fields. Webb led the boarding party, each step measured and silent. They encountered no resistance. The codes had worked flawlessly. In the heart of the facility, they found her. A female Nausicaan, fingers dancing across holographic interfaces with inhuman speed. She spun at their approach, eyes widening in recognition. "You're not supposed to be here," she hissed, voice tinged with admiration. "Neither are you, I'd wager," Webb replied, weapon trained on her chest. "Who are you?" "Zara," she answered, a hint of defiance in her tone. "Part of the resistance working to tear down the Empire from within. And you, Captain Webb, are the key to unraveling it all." Webb's grip on his weapon tightened. "Explain." Zara's words spilled forth, a torrent of hidden truths. The ancient war between humans and Nausicaans, a conflict far more pivotal than history recorded. A truth the Empire had buried, terrified of its implications. "Help me defect," Zara pleaded, "and I'll show you where to find the answers. The archive facility on Craxus Prime. It holds the key to humanity's lost legacy, and perhaps its salvation. Webb studied her, weighing trust against desperation. He nodded, a decision made. The journey to Craxus Prime was tense, Webb's crew eyeing their Nausicaan passenger with poorly concealed suspicion. But Zara's intel proved true. The archive loomed before them, a citadel of forbidden knowledge. Infiltration went smoothly, until it didn't. Alarms blared as Webb downloaded the last fragments of data, ancient star charts and classified reports flickering across his datapad. He caught glimpses of impossible things: a hidden human armada, mothballed warships of legend, a failsafe against Nausicaan betrayal. "Time to go!" Nova shouted, laying down cover fire as Nausicaan security forces poured into the chamber. They fought their way out, a brutal gauntlet of energy weapons and close-quarters combat. Webb's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of history, even as he ducked and weaved through enemy fire. A Nausicaan transport, commandeered in a hail of plasma bolts, carried them to freedom. But freedom was fleeting. Nausicaan warships appeared on sensors, closing fast. "We're out of options, Captain," the helmsman reported, voice grim. "Fuel's nearly gone." Webb scanned star charts, searching for salvation. His eyes locked onto a system on the edge of known space. "There," he pointed, Daxamite territory. Nova paled. "The Daxamites? They're unpredictable at best, sir. Dangerous at worst." "So are our alternatives," Webb countered. "Set course. We're about to test our diplomatic skills." The transport limped into Daxamite space, trailing sparks and venting atmosphere. As the sleek forms of Daxamite vessels surrounded them, Webb steeled himself for the challenge ahead. One wrong word could spell disaster. But somewhere in this powder keg of galactic politics lay the path to Earth's salvation and the key to humanity's destiny among the stars. The Daxamite ambassador's face filled the view screen, her crystalline features impassive as she studied Webb and his ragtag crew. "Your request for asylum is unprecedented, Captain," she said, her voice a melodic chime. "But these are unprecedented times." Webb exhaled slowly, acutely aware of the Nausicaan warships lurking just beyond the system's border. "We have information vital to galactic stability," he pressed. "All we ask is safe passage and a chance to explain." The ambassador's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "Very well. You may dock at Outpost Sigma 9, but be warned, any hostile action will be met with overwhelming force." As the shadow limped towards the angular Daxamite station, Webb turned to Nova. "Keep Zara under close watch. I don't entirely trust our new ally." Nova nodded grimly. "And the data from Craxus Prime?" "Fragmentary but intriguing," Webb replied, his mind racing. "References to a hidden human fleet, mothballed warships, and coordinates to something called the Drexian Nebula." Hours of tense negotiation followed, Webb laying out the stakes to increasingly alarm Daxamite officials. In the end, a tenuous agreement was reached. The Daxamites, wary of Nausicaan expansion, would provide covert assistance, a refitted scout ship, and provisional diplomatic credentials. As they prepared to depart, Zara approached Webb, her alien features set in willpower. "I'm coming with you," she stated flatly. Webb studied her, weighing trust against necessity. "Why?" "Because I've seen the truth of what my people have become," Zara hissed, "and because you'll need me to navigate what lies ahead." Reluctantly, Webb agreed. Within hours they were underway, their new vessel, christened the Phantom, slipping past the Nausicaan patrols and into the vast unknown. Days stretched into weeks as they followed the cryptic trail, jumping from system to system, always one step ahead of their pursuers. The crew grew restless, doubt gnawing at their drive. Then finally, they reached the edge of charted space. "There," Zara breathed, pointing to a swirling mass of cosmic dust on the long-range scanners. "The Drexian Nebula." As they approached, proximity alarms blared. A sleek, predatory vessel materialized from the nebula's outer fringes, weapon ports glowing with deadly intent. "Unknown vessel," a harsh voice crackled over the comms. "This is Commander Crax of the Triant Imperium. You have entered restricted space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Webb's hands tightened on the controls. Evasive maneuvers, he barked. We're going in! The Phantom plunged into the nebula's roiling depths, Krax's warship in hot pursuit. Stellar dust and ionized gas battered their shields as Webb pushed the ship to its limits, weaving through treacherous eddies and half-formed stars. Energy signature detected, Nova called out, her voice barely audible over the groaning hull. Looks like some kind of station? Good enough, Webb grunted, angling the Phantom towards the faint reading. Hang on. They burst from a particularly dense patch of nebula to find themselves face-to-face with a massive orbital structure. Ancient and pitted with micrometeorite impacts, it nonetheless bore the unmistakable hallmarks of human engineering. It's a dry dock, Zara breathed, awe evident in her voice. One of the Lost Fleet's outposts. With Krax's ships closing fast, Webb had no choice. He maneuvered the Phantom into the cavernous main bay, praying the ancient force field generators still functioned. As the pursuing Triant vessels entered weapons range, Webb and his crew raced through the derelict station. Zara's fingers flew across her datapad, interfacing with dormant systems. I've got something, she shouted. Defensive grid coming online? Ancient turrets sputtered to life, their energy beams lancing out to meet the Triant assault. Force fields flickered into existence, barely deflecting the first salvo of enemy fire. We need those coordinates, Webb shouted, ducking as a stray bolt punched through the hull nearby. Where's the command center? Zara pointed down a darkened corridor. This way, but the systems are badly degraded. It'll take time to... Her words were cut off by a deafening explosion. Triant boarding pods had breached the station's outer hull. Nova, take a team and hold them off, Webb ordered. Zara, with me. We're getting those coordinates. As they raced deeper into the station's guts, the sounds of battle echoed through ancient hallways. Webb's mind whirled, piecing together the fragments of long-buried history. A hidden human armada, waiting for the moment to strike. The key to toppling the Nausicaan threat once and for all. They reached the command center, its banks of computers covered in centuries of dust. Zara immediately set to work, her alien biology allowing her to interface directly with the archaic systems. I've almost got it, she muttered, her eyes unfocused as she sifted through layers of encrypted data. Just a few more. A plasma bolt sizzled past Webb's ear. He spun, weapon raised, to find himself face-to-face with a Triant soldier. Before he could react, Zara's own weapon barked twice. The alien crumpled to the floor. There, Zara said, her voice strangely flat. I have the coordinates. Webb lowered his weapon slowly, a chill running down his spine as realization dawned. You knew they'd be here, he said quietly. You led us into a trap. Zara's alien features twisted into something unreadable. It's more complicated than that, Webb. I had to be sure. Had to see for myself. Before Webb could respond, Nova's voice crackled over the comms. Captain, we're overrun. Triant forces have taken the docking bay. We need to go, now. Webb's mind raced, weighing impossible choices. The coordinates to humanity's salvation, so tantalizingly close. But at what cost? And could he trust the very being who had brought them here? Stand down, Webb, a new voice growled. Commander Krax stepped into view, flanked by heavily armed Triant soldiers. Your little quest ends here. Webb's fingers tightened on his weapon as he glanced between Krax, Zara, and the terminal, containing humanity's last hope. Time seemed to slow as he weighed his next move, knowing that whatever he chose would irrevocably alter the course of the galaxy. Webb's mind raced, calculating odds and trajectories. He locked eyes with Nova across the room, a silent understanding passing between them. In one fluid motion, Webb dropped to the floor, unleashing a barrage of plasma fire that sent Krax and his soldiers diving for cover. Now, Webb bellowed. Nova activated her wrist-mounted shield generator, forming a shimmering barrier between them and the Triant forces. Webb seized Zara by the arm, yanking her towards the exit as Nova laid down suppressing fire. This way, Webb shouted into his comm unit. guiding the rest of his scattered crew through the labyrinthine station. They sprinted through corridors choked with debris, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. Plasma bolts sizzled past, scorching ancient bulkheads. Webb's crew fought back, using their knowledge of the station's layout to set hasty ambushes. They rigged power conduits to overload, creating blinding flashes that disoriented their pursuers. Makeshift barricades of twisted metal slowed the Triant advance. As they neared the docking bay, a new threat emerged. A lithe figure stepped from the shadows, leveling an exotic weapon at Webb's head. "The coordinates," the alien mercenary demanded, her voice a sibilant hiss. "Now!" "Zetra," Zara breathed, recognition and betrayal mingling in her tone. Before anyone could react, Nova struck. Her combat knife flashed, disarming Zetra in a spray of alien blood. The two grappled fiercely, a brutal dance of elbows and knees. "Go!" Nova grunted, pinning the thrashing mercenary. "I've got this!" Webb hesitated for a heartbeat, then nodded grimly. He led the rest of the team to the Phantom, prepping for emergency launch even as Triant reinforcements poured into the bay. Nova arrived moments later, dragging a subdued Zetra. "She transmitted the coordinates," Nova reported, shoving the mercenary into a holding cell. "To pirates." Webb's curse was drowned out by the roar of the Phantom's engines. They blasted free of the station, only to find themselves surrounded by a Triant battle group. "Weapons charged, sir," the tactical officer reported, voice tight with tension. "But we're outgunned 10-1. Webb opened his mouth to give the order to fight, when space itself seemed to tear open. A massive pirate armada erupted from the nebula's depths, energy weapons blazing. "Go!" Webb shouted. "Maximum warp!" The Phantom leapt forward, slipping between the chaos of two colliding fleets. They rode the shockwave of a dying Triant cruiser, using its final explosion to mask their warp signature. Days passed in tense silence as they followed the coordinates. When they finally dropped out of warp, a collective gasp filled the bridge. Before them floated an artificial micronebula, a swirling veil of cosmic dust and energy. As they penetrated its outer layers, a graveyard of titanic proportions revealed itself. The twisted husks of ancient warships stretched as far as the eye could see, perfectly preserved in the nebula's embrace. "My God," someone whispered. Webb's eyes locked onto a faint energy signature, pulsing from deep within the debris field. "There," he pointed. "That's our target." As they maneuvered closer, the magnitude of their discovery became clear. It wasn't just a ship, it was a dreadnought of impossible size, easily dwarfing anything in humanity's current arsenal. A proximity alarm shattered the moment of awe. Sensors lit up with incoming warp signatures, Triant and pirate vessels converging on their position. "Battle stations," Webb ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "And get me a boarding team ready. We're waking up that dreadnought." The Phantom shuddered as the first salvo of enemy fire impacted its shields. Around them, the silent graveyard erupted into a furious three-way battle. Webb's fingers tightened on the arms of his chair as he watched the titanic forces collide, knowing that the fate of humanity now hinged on their next move. "Move." Webb's voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. "Tactical, target that dreadnought's main reactor. Helm, full impulse, thread us through the debris field." The Phantom surged forward, dodging twisted hull fragments and ghostly remnants of ancient battles. Enemy fire lanced past, superheating pockets of cosmic dust into brief, brilliant nebulae. "Boarding teams, stand ready," Webb ordered, his eyes fixed on the looming behemoth ahead. "We're going in hot." The Phantom shuddered as a glancing blow struck their aft shields. Alarms blared, but Webb ignored them, guiding their approach with laser focus. As they neared the dreadnought's cavernous launch bay, he barked a final command. "Now!" Mag-sealed boarding pods erupted from the Phantom's hull, arcing towards the ancient vessel. Webb felt the familiar lurch of artificial gravity as his pod impacted, cutting through eons-old force fields. The hatch blew open and he emerged, weapon raised, into a world of shadows and dust. "Nova, secure engineering," he said into his comm. "I'm heading for the bridge." Webb's team advanced through corridors choked with detritus, awakening long-dormant systems with each step. Holographic interfaces flickered to life, bathing them in ethereal light. A distant explosion rocked the ship. "Triant boarding parties," Nova's voice crackled. "We're engaging multiple hostiles." Webb cursed under his breath. They were running out of time. The bridge doors hissed open, revealing a cathedral of dead tech. Webb's fingers danced across control panels, coaxing life into slumbering circuits. Slowly, inexorably, the dreadnought stirred. "Captain," Nova's voice was urgent, "we can't hold them much longer." Webb gritted his teeth, willing the ancient weapons to power up faster. The bridge view screen flickered to life, revealing a swarm of Triant fighters closing in. "Come on," Webb muttered. "Come on." A deep thrum reverberated through the ship. Targeting systems came online, locking onto the Triant fleet. Webb allowed himself a grim smile. Fire! The dreadnought's main cannon erupted with impossible force. A lance of pure energy tore through space, vaporizing Triant ships like paper in a furnace. The shock wave expanded outward, crippling the remaining vessels. In the stunned silence that followed, Webb's voice rang out. "All hands, secure your positions. We're not done yet." Hours passed in a blur of activity. Webb coordinated salvage teams, reactivating dormant human ships scattered throughout the debris field. A small armada took shape, each vessel a piece of forgotten history brought back to life. As the last ship powered up, proximity alarms blared. A massive Triant battle group dropped out of warp, their weapons already charging. Webb's teeth clenched. "Nova, take the Phantom and a third of our ships. We need supplies, manpower, anything you can scrounge up. I'll lead the rest to the Andorian colony in the Epsilon sector. We'll rendezvous at these coordinates in 72 hours. Nova nodded grimly. "Understood, Captain. Good hunting." As their fleets diverged, Webb watched the Triant juggernaut grow larger on the screen. He addressed his crew, his voice steady despite the weight of history on his shoulders. "This is where we make our stand. All ships, battle formations. Let's show these Triants what humanity can do." The battle raged for hours, human ingenuity clashing against Triant might. Webb's makeshift fleet danced through the debris field, using the ancient hulks as cover while unleashing salvos from their newly awakened weapons. But even with the dreadnought's firepower, they were outnumbered and outgunned. "Shields critical!" the tactical officer shouted as another Triant barrage rocked the ship. "We can't take much more of this, Captain." Webb's eyes scanned the tactical display, searching for an escape route. "There," he pointed to a dense cluster of derelicts. "Helm, take us in. All ships, follow our lead." The human fleet dove into the artificial asteroid field, weaving between twisted metal and frozen corpses. Triant pursuers smashed against the debris, their larger ships unable to navigate the treacherous maze. "We've bought ourselves some time," Webb said, allowing himself a moment's reprieve. "But we need a safe harbor to regroup and repair." Zara, her alien features set in unwavering purpose, spoke up. "I know a place, Krendor Prime. It's an independent mining colony with no love for the Triant Empire." Webb raised an eyebrow. "Can we trust them?" Zara's mandibles clicked in what might have been a shrug. "They're xenophobic and stubborn, but they hate the Triants more than they fear outsiders. It's our best shot." "Set course for Krendor Prime," Webb ordered, "and let's hope your assessment is right." The battered human fleet limped into Krendor's system days later, greeted by the imposing sight of orbital defense platforms. A gruff voice crackled over the comms. "Unidentified vessels, state your business or be obliterated." Webb leaned forward. "This is Captain Webb of the Human Resistance. We seek temporary refuge and repairs." A tense silence followed. Finally, the voice returned. "Dock at these coordinates. Any hostile action will be met with immediate destruction." As Webb's strike team shuttled down to the planet's surface, he found himself face-to-face with the Kren nobility, a collection of stern-faced aliens with craggy, granite-like skin. Their leader, High Magistrate Dorn, fixed Webb with a stony glare. "You bring the wrath of the Triant Empire to our doorstep, human," Dorn rumbled. Give me one reason why we shouldn't turn you over to them right now. Webb met the alien's gaze unflinchingly. Because we offer you something no one else can. Freedom from imperial quotas and garrisons. A murmur rippled through the assembled Kryn. Dorn's eyes narrowed. Bold words. How do you propose to accomplish this? Simple, Webb said, allowing a hint of swagger to creep into his voice. We take out their control hub, disable their defenses, and give your people the opening they need to throw off the Triant yoke. The negotiations stretched on for hours, a delicate dance of threats and promises. Webb played to the Kryn's pride, their resentment, their buried desire for independence. When tempers flared, he matched their posturing with his own brash confidence. Finally, Dorn slammed a rock-like fist on the table. Very well, human. You have your chance. Fail, and your fleet burns. Under cover of darkness, Webb led a small team through Krendor Prime's twisting canyons. They approached the Triant garrison, a gleaming monolith of alien architecture amid the rough-hewn Kryn settlements. Nova, what's your status? Webb whispered into his comm. In position, came the reply, ready to cause one hell of a distraction on your mark. Webb nodded to his team. Let's move. They slipped past automated defenses, Zara's alien tech proving invaluable in bypassing Triant security measures. As they neared the control hub, alarms suddenly blared to life. Intruder alert, a mechanized voice screeched. All units converge on Sector 7. That's our cue, Webb growled. Nova, light 'em up. Explosions rocked the far side of the compound as Nova's team launched their diversionary attack. Webb's squad used the chaos to storm the control hub, plasma rifles spitting fire as they cut down surprise Triant defenders. Zara's fingers flew over alien consoles, disabling defense grids and communication relays. It's done, she shouted. Planetary defenses are offline. As if on cue, the sound of massed Kryn war cries echoed through the night. The uprising had begun. Days later, Webb stood on a balcony overlooking the captured Triant shipyards. Kryn workers swarmed over the facilities, retrofitting alien vessels for human use. High Magistrate Dorn approached, his stony features set in what passed for a smile among his people. You have kept your word, human, Dorn rumbled. The Kryn people stand with you against the Triant menace. Webb nodded, but his eyes were fixed on the horizon. Somewhere out there, Nova was leading desperately needed supply raids. And beyond that, the full might of the Triant Empire was surely gathering. The real test, Webb said quietly, is still to come. The real test, Webb said quietly, is still to come. As if summoned by his words, alarms blared across the shipyard. A young ensign burst onto the balcony, breathless. Captain, multiple warp signatures detected at the system's edge. It's Subjugator Prime Malverin's Armada. Webb's lips pursed. He turned to Dorn. How quickly can you mobilize your defenses? The Kryn's stony features hardened. Our orbital platforms are ready, but ground-based batteries need time. Time we don't have, Webb muttered. He tapped his comm. Nova, status report. Supply run successful, Captain, Nova's voice crackled. ETA 20 minutes. Make it 10. We've got company. Webb strode into the command center, a flurry of activity erupting around him. Tactical displays flickered to life, showing the encroaching Imperial fleet, a sea of red markers dwarfing their own meager forces. All ships, battle stations, Webb ordered. Krendor defense grid, coordinate with our vessels. We need to buy time for Nova's reinforcements. The skies above Krendor Prime erupted in fire as the first salvos were exchanged. Webb's ragtag fleet, bolstered by Krend orbital platforms, formed a defensive line against the Imperial onslaught. Incoming transmission, an officer called out. A hulking Triant appeared on screen, mandibles clicking in what passed for a sneer. This is Subjugator Prime Malverin. Surrender the human filth, and your world may yet be spared. Before Webb could respond, the feed cut out. A new face appeared. Krend nobility, but not Dorn. I am Regent Kazgora, the alien growled. By decree of the true Krend, all outsiders are to depart immediately. Comply, and you may leave with your lives. Webb's mind raced. A coup, now of all times? He opened a channel to Dorn. What's happening down there? Treachery, Dorn spat. The isolationists have seized power. They demand... The transmission dissolved into static. Captain, Tactical shouted, Kren ground batteries are powering up and they're targeting our ships. Webb hit his fist on the console. Evasive maneuvers. Get our people off the surface, now! The shipyards erupted into chaos. Shuttles scrambled to evacuate human personnel as Kren loyalists clashed with the usurpers. Webb's fleet found itself caught in a deadly crossfire, Imperial warships pressing their advantage while planetside defenses turned against their former allies. Nova, Webb barked into his comm, change of plans. We need you to... A blinding flash cut him off. One of the mothballed dreadnoughts, still undergoing refit in the orbital dockyards, erupted in a massive explosion. The shockwave sent debris hurtling in all directions, peppering shields and scoring hull plating. Status report, Webb demanded. Kren saboteurs, came the grim reply. They're targeting our salvage operation. Webb's mind raced. They couldn't abandon the shipyards, not with Malvarine bearing down on them. But how could they fight a war on two fronts? Zara, he called to his alien companion. Take a strike team planetside, secure those defense batteries and establish a beachhead for our forces. I'll handle things up here. As Zara's shuttle rocketed towards the turbulent surface of Krendor Prime, Webb turned his attention back to the space battle. Nova's reinforcements had arrived, evening the odds somewhat, but Malvarine's numbers were overwhelming. All ships, Webb commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. Form up on the dreadnought. We're making a push for their flagship. The human fleet surged forward, ancient warships awakened from eons of slumber, now thrust into the heart of battle. Webb watched the tactical display, guiding his forces through the storm of Imperial fire. They just needed one opening, one chance to... A proximity alarm blared. Webb's eyes widened as he saw a massive energy spike from the planet below. Evasive action, he shouted. The Kren orbital defense grid opened fire, not on the Imperial ships, but on Malvarine's vanguard. Caught in the crossfire, a third of the Triant fleet erupted into balls of superheated plasma. Webb's comm crackled to life. Zara's voice, breathless but triumphant. Defense grid secured, Captain, but we've lost the last Kren loyalists in the process. A Pyrrhic victory, but it bought them precious time. Webb's eyes locked onto Malvarine's flagship, now exposed and vulnerable. All ships, he ordered. Concentrate fire on the subjugator's command vessel. This ends now. As his fleet unleashed its fury, Webb allowed himself a grim smile. They had a chance, however slim, to strike at the heart of the Trian Empire. But at what cost? And what would they find if they pushed deeper into enemy territory? The battle raged on, humanity's fate hanging in the balance above the ravaged world of Krendor Prime. The dreadnought shuddered as another volley of Triant fire slammed into its shields. Webb gripped the command console, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Status report, he barked. Shields holding at 32%, Captain, the tactical officer replied. But we can't take much more of this. Webb's eyes hardened. They had struck a blow against Malvarine's forces. But the Subjugator Prime was far from defeated. The remnants of the Imperial Armada regrouped with startling efficiency, bearing down on the human fleet with renewed fury. All ships, prepare for emergency warp, Webb ordered. Plot a course for the Carnivus system. A stunned silence fell over the bridge. Sir, his XO ventured, that's the heart of Triant space. We'd be flying straight into... The Lion's Den, Webb finished. Exactly. They won't expect us to be so bold. As the human fleet engaged their warp drives, Webb turned to Zara. We need a plan to penetrate Carnovis's defenses. Any ideas? The alien's compound eyes glittered. Perhaps, but you won't like it. Hours later, Webb watched from the bridge as several of their most battered ships veered away from the main fleet, racing ahead towards Carnovis. Each was packed with enough explosives to vaporize a small moon. Malvarine's forces are taking the bait, Tactical reported. They're moving to intercept. Webb nodded grimly. Commence Phase 2. All stealth frigates. Deploy Nova's teams to the shipyards. As chaos erupted in Carnovis's orbital defenses, Webb's dreadnought plunged into the planet's atmosphere. The ship groaned under the strain, hull plates glowing red-hot as they tore through layers of smog and metallic haze. "My God," someone whispered, as the ship broke through the cloud cover. Carnovis stretched beneath them, a world-spanning metropolis of impossible scale. Towering hive spires vanished into the polluted sky, while endless streams of vehicles flowed through the canyons between. There, Webb pointed to a massive structure dominating the horizon. The Imperial Command Citadel. All batteries, prepare for Alpha Strike. The dreadnought's weapons powered up, ready to unleash devastation. But at the last moment, alarms blared across the bridge. "Incoming fire!" Tactical shouted. "Malverin's ships! They've broken through!" The command citadel shimmered as void shields snapped into place, moments before the human barrage would have annihilated it. Webb banged his head on the console. "Deploy ground forces, now! We need to get inside that citadel before Malverin can reinforce it." Dropships streamed from the dreadnought's hangars, descending into the mechanical hell of Carnovis. Webb watched the tactical feeds as his Marines touched down, immediately engulfed in a storm of weapons fire. Colossal Triant combat walkers emerged from concealed bays, their insectoid legs crushing vehicles and infrastructure alike. Human plasma rifles seemed to barely scratch their chitinous armor. "This is Zulu Squad," a Marine's voice crackled over the comms. "We're pinned down in Sector 7. These things are everywhere." Webb's mind raced. They were outgunned and outnumbered, fighting an enemy on their home turf. He needed to even the odds. "All ships," he commanded, "target those hive spires. Blast us a path to the citadel." The sky lit up as human vessels unleashed their fury on Carnovis arcology towers. Massive structures collapsed, crushing Triant walkers and clearing corridors for Webb's advancing troops. But as the human forces pushed deeper into the city, the situation grew more desperate. Malverin, in a move of unprecedented ruthlessness, began bombarding his own capital from orbit. "Captain," Zara called out, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the city. It's like the planet itself is waking up." Webb's blood ran cold as he saw them. Titanic forms rising from hidden vaults, dwarfing even the largest Triant war machines. The Judicator Titans had awakened. "Nova," Webb said into his comm, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his chest. "The mission's changed. We need you inside that citadel. Take down those void shields, or none of this will matter." As Nova's acknowledgement came through, Webb turned back to the tactical display. The Judicator Titans lumbered towards his fragmented forces, each step bringing humanity closer to annihilation. He took a deep breath, knowing the next few hours would determine not just the fate of this battle, but of his entire species. The Judicator Titans emerged from the burning hive cities, their colossal forms dwarfing even the tallest structures of Carnovis. Each thunderous step sent tremors through the planet's crust, toppling weakened buildings and opening fissures in the streets. Arcs of eldritch energy crackled along their mile-high bodies, casting an eerie glow across the ravaged landscape. Webb's eyes widened as he watched the monstrosities advance on the tactical display. "All ships, concentrate fire on those abominations," he ordered, his voice tight with urgency. The human fleet unleashed a devastating barrage, but their most potent weapons seemed to dissipate harmlessly against the Titans' shimmering void shields. Webb gritted his teeth as the ineffectual assault continued, precious minutes ticking away. "Nova, status report," he barked into his comm. "Still fighting our way through the citadel," came the strained reply. "These Triant bastards don't know when to quit." Webb's mind raced. They needed more time, but conventional tactics were useless against these monstrosities. His gaze fell on the few remaining dropships in the dreadnought's hangar. "All Marines, prepare for immediate deployment," he announced, striding towards the nearest shuttle. "We're taking the fight directly to those Titans." Zara fell into step beside him. "Captain, the odds of survival—" "I know," Webb cut her off, "but we're out of options." Moments later, a swarm of boarding craft erupted from the human ships, hurtling towards the advancing Judicators. Webb's shuttle shuddered as it weaved through streams of defensive fire, alien energy weapons lashing out to swat the humans from the sky. "Brace for impact," Webb shouted as they neared the nearest Titan's leg. The shuttle slammed into the creature's armor, magnetic grapples deploying to anchor them in place. Webb and his team spilled out, immediately assaulted by the actinic glare of the void shields mere meters away. "Deploy EMP charges," Webb ordered, hefting a bulky device. "We need to punch a hole in that shield." All around the Titan's massive form, similar scenes played out. Human marines swarmed over the creature like insects, planting explosives and firing cutting beams into its living armor. Gradually, infinitesimal cracks began to appear in the impenetrable barrier. But the cost was immense. With sickening regularity, Webb watched as entire squads were obliterated, crushed by the Titan's movements or vaporized by point defense weapons that emerged from its hide. Their numbers dwindled rapidly until Webb found himself alone, clinging to a massive tusk as the final Judicator lumbered towards the Imperial Citadel. His comlink crackled. "Captain!" Nova's voice tinged with desperation. "We've reached the shield generator, but—" "No time," Webb interrupted. "I'm rigging the Dreadnought's warp core to overload. Be ready to lower those shields the instant I give the signal." Inside the Citadel, Nova's face paled as she realized the implications. She turned to her team, gesturing urgently at the shield controls. "Get ready to drop them on my mark." Webb's fingers flew over his wrist computer, remotely accessing the Dreadnought's systems. Warning klaxons blared across the comm channel as the warp core's containment field began to destabilize. "Now, Nova," Webb shouted. "Do it now!" In the Citadel's control room, Nova hesitated for a fraction of a second. Lowering the shields would leave them exposed to the blast, but keeping them up would doom Webb's audacious attempt. Her hand slammed down on the control panel, overriding the safeties. The void shields flickered and died. Webb's eyes locked onto the rapidly approaching ground as the Judicator took another earth-shaking step. He closed his eyes, thumb hovering over the detonation key. "For Earth," he whispered, and pressed the button. A sun bloomed in the heart of Carnivus. The overloading warp core tore a hole in reality itself, unleashing energies that scoured the Judicator from existence. The blast wave rippled outward, shattering the weakened Citadel and sending shockwaves across the planet's surface. In the aftermath, as fires raged and the sky wept ash, a battered figure emerged from the ruins of the Imperial Command Center. Nova surveyed the devastation, her face a mask of grit and grief. They had won a foothold on the Triant throne world, but at a terrible cost. As human ships descended to secure their hard-won territory, Nova's comm unit crackled to life. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy, news of the Empire's vulnerability spreading like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, the oppressed masses rose up against their Triant overlords. Nova's expression hardened as she realized the true scope of what they had unleashed. The old order was crumbling, but the resulting power vacuum threatened to plunge the galaxy into chaos. As she organized the remaining human forces, a grim certainty settled in her gut. The war to reclaim humanity's place among the stars had only just begun.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.